Hello and welcome to the Last Looks podcast, a show where we catch up with talented hairstylists and makeup artists in the film and television industry. We'll pick their super creative brains and find out all the good stuff. Join me, your host, Jamie Lee, in finding out what's what in the hair and makeup departments around the world.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Newsflash! Want to know how those Tinseltown starlets get those gleamy golden gams? How those sultry sirens light up the silver screen with that lit-from-within glow? How they get that gorgeous makeup to last all day and night? Well, gather round, 'cause I've got the buffo news right here that's causing the paparazzi to buzz like bees. It's Melanie Mills Hollywood, of course. It's the secret of the red carpet, and now it's your secret too. Pro makeup artist Melanie Mills developed these multi-purpose and multicultural products right from the makeup trailer on the set of smash hit Dancing with the Stars. From her amazing face and body radiances, a deliciously special sauce made up of a makeup, moisturizer, and glow all-in-one that comes in 6 stunning shades, to her super light, long-lasting setting spray that holds those looks popping and keeps mouths dropping till the cows come home. This fine aerosol mist sets your makeup as easy as 1, 2, 3. For flawless makeup applications, the Melanie Mills Hollywood Brush Collection is the answer to your prayers. These affordable, buttery soft vegan brushes are just what you need to sculpt, shape, highlight, and contour. Whatever the party calls for, Melanie Mills Hollywood has you covered. And remember that all these gorgeous, cruelty-free vegan products are tested on celebrities, never on animals. MelanieMillsHollywood.com.
And now, our feature presentation.
Okay, it's Oscars time, and of course, the Last Looks podcast is all up in that business. We have 5 bonus episodes where I'll be catching up with all 5 teams nominated for their superb makeup and hair work. All teams are asked the same set of questions, but of course, they all have very different answers. The Oscars makeup and hair lineup for 2023 is All Quiet on the Western Front, The Batman, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Elvis, and The Whale. The 95th Academy Awards will be presented at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles on Sunday, March 12th. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast, guys. It really does take a lot to get all these teams together to be able to bring these bonus episodes to you. With everyone working and shooting all over the world, as you know, it's hard. It certainly takes time and effort, so for that, I'm thankful to you, the listener, and all my guests. And a big shout out to our sponsors. We thank you for your continued support. Sponsors of our Oscars special episodes are Hands Down Refresher and Sanitizer, John Blake's Wigs and Facial Hair, Luxe Skin FX, Melanie Mills Hollywood, and Neo Cosmetic Cases. I hope you enjoy these special episodes as much as I did putting them together.
Pictures up,
Last looks. Rolling.
and action.
Welcome to the Last Looks podcast team.
Hi.
Hello.
So congratulations on your Oscar nomination for your work on the film Elvis. It's so good to have you here again, Mark. I have spoken to you before. And hi, Jason. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yes, honored to be back.
So let's start with some introductions, which I kind of just did. But if you could tell me what you guys did on the film. Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so Mark Coulier, yes, I was the prosthetic makeup designer on the film, mainly sorting out the characters of Elvis and Colonel Tom Parker. Jason?
Thanks. I'm Jason Baird. I was the prosthetic supervisor for Mark on the film Elvis. And yeah, we looked after both Colonel Tom Parker and Elvis's makeups throughout the journey of the film on set in Australia, handling the day-to-day prosthetic applications and fat suit connectivity with both characters.
Oh, that's so cool. So I'd love to know from both of you, but we'll start with Jason. When you first heard the news that you'd been nominated, like what was going through your mind? Explain this to us.
Well, being the first time I've been nominated, it was quite a surreal experience, I have to say. And yeah, it's just that pinch me moment. But you start to reflect on your career at that point and what it took to get you to be in a position where you could be asked to look after such makeups and be in a position to be confident enough to do it. So yeah, it's kind of reflective, I thought.
Did you listen to the announcement? Like you would have been asleep, would you? Been in Australia?
Yeah, that's right. I was going to stay up, but I had a lot to do the next day, so I thought, look, I'll pick up my phone as soon as I wake up. I'll pick up the phone, and someone will have posted it. So I knew I didn't have to dig too deep to find that out.
I'm sure a few messages were coming in.
Oh, they were coming in, and I heard, on obviously Instagram, and then a couple of hours later, you get a letter from the governors officially saying, "Fantastic, good job," and you've been nominated. So that was fantastic news. Yeah.
And this isn't the first one for you, Mark. So how do you deal with it these days?
These days, that's funny. I think we're so busy at work, and I think it's happened the other times before that I've got into work and just started, spreadsheets, sending this, sorting somebody out, like working out sculptures, blah 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 blah. So I tend to totally forget about it. And then it's just a case of the phone pings at some point, and you're prepared for disappointment, but it's really nice. I don't want to sit there waiting to hear. I didn't even do that the first time with the Iron Lady. I didn't sit there waiting. I think the guys were working in the workshop and someone ran into the office and said, hey, guess what? And then I'd actually totally forgotten about it at the time. I was so busy. So yeah. And then the other thing is, it's like, okay, you're going to be taking credit for all this work that everybody around you has done, so that's always kind of like, so you go, hey, congratulations guys. And they know that you're the one that's going to go and get the champagne and the flight over to LA, so it's always a bit tinged with, I'm really sorry guys, but hey, guess what?
Well, then you have you kind of have to hold it all on your shoulders, don't you guys, to kind of speak on everybody.
You do, yeah. So, the other thing about it is, you think, well, I've worked for 35 years and pretty much it's a pretty tough business that we're in, isn't it? The film industry, and the prosthetic side of it is really tough because you're dealing with these characters that are on screen and on it in close up all the way through the movie. And you're on set with these bits of rubber that you've stuck on their face, and you're trying to make it and keep it looking 100% the entire time. And you're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We've all been there. We've all done all that stuff. So, it's just a bit of payback for all that hard work you've done for years and years, not just on that movie, but on everything that you've done, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if we could start kind of talking about the characters that you're nominated for in the film. Mark, do you want to start with that, just with kind of research and development and through to Jason with daily application and things like that?
Yeah, so I first got a call off producer Patrick McCormick, who I've worked with before, and he said, I've got this project and it's Elvis, and it was like, oh great, and what an awesome project. I'm a big Elvis fan anyway. And then he told us that Tom Hanks was playing Colonel Tom Parker. So and again, that is your perfect prosthetics job, that somebody's just offered you on a plate there, really. You're not bidding against anybody else. It's just hey guys, do you want to do this job? So it was really great. Then it was like, initially it was, okay, you're just doing some stuff on Tom Hanks to do Colonel Tom Parker. And the more we talked and the more we went through it, we kind of realized that actually there was going to be more involved in prosthetics with Austin's character, which is a little bit more terrifying, because you've got to transmogrify somebody into Elvis and do it all justice, No one really, people have a vague idea what Colonel Tom Parker looks like, but everyone knows what Elvis looks like. It's a bit like doing Rami Malek for
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, you're like, how do you find
Yeah,
that sweet spot? You know. So then it was like, okay, let's go through all the research. So we did all the usual back and forth through all the decades. You know, we were going to be taking both characters on a journey from the 50s to when Elvis died in the 70s, you know, so we covered, you know, 2.5 decades. So we were going to be, you know, especially with Elvis, he changed a lot, you know, the fashion changed, the hair and facial hair changed, the shape of his face changed as he matured. So we were looking at doing these small appliances on his cheeks and jawline and chin to get him, to turn him from this young, fresh-faced Austin Butler into the mature Vegas years, and then his decline from 68, 70 to 77, which was pretty rapid over a short period of time, really, where he was, you know, going through taking too many drugs and, you know, putting weight on and to that very sad, unchained melody that takes us through to the end of the movie. I'll let Jason do a bit of chat about what he did too. Yeah, it was really heartbreaking, wasn't it? It's a heartbreaking story. I listened to an interview, which is great, with Guillermo del Toro interviewing Baz Luhrmann, which is on the portal, the BAFTA portal, and it's so fascinating, the journey that he took on.
Yeah, so I got a couple of calls because I was obviously here in Australia when the production had set up, and I got 2 calls, one from Kerry Thompson, who was the costume supervisor, and Leslie Vanderwald, who was the makeup supervisor and hair supervisor at the time, at the very inception of the film. And at that point, I think the conversation had already started with Mark, and Leslie was talking them through putting me and my team in place to look after Mark's work. So while that was coming along, we received the body scans for Tom Hanks and Austin Butler, and we started to develop the fat suits for both characters with Catherine Martin, the costume designer. And that started in a digital format. We did some digital sculpting of bodies and different looks, and we honed that. We ended up doing, after the digital stuff was done, we ended up sculpting Austin's fat suit practically. Instead of shaping it up out of foam and making pockets and all that sort of stuff, we actually sculpted his fat suit and 3D print all of Tom Hanks's fat suit sections and cast them in foam and inserted those foam sections into a power mesh undersuit. And they were all in the process of being built. And then as soon as the 2 actors turned up, I guess end of December, January, is a very tight window for testing. We started to refine them basically, because once you get them into the suits, you realize, oh, we've got to tweak this, tweak that. And then we had some jumpsuits to try on, and some of Tom Parker's costumes had come into the mix. So we actually had clothing to put over the top of the fat suits to refine and tweak where the weight should really be and where it shouldn't be. Also, Catherine got actual jumpsuits from Graceland where they're being stored that Elvis actually wore. So Austin was very, very close indeed to Elvis's size. And so then they knew where we could let things out, make things thicker, make things thinner, so that we got the fit right. So talk a little bit, I guess, about the handover, shall I? It's like COVID shut the production down after the initial tests were done with Mark, and I'll let Mark talk about that. But when we came back from COVID, we had the 5 months to prep most of the appliances for both characters, at least to get us started. Prepaid a lot of the pieces. We came back from COVID and we were able to do a number of extra tests on Elvis, and only one more test on Tom Hanks because he flew in late.
Can I just jump in and just say it's really interesting how, you know, we're talking to all the prosthetics guys who all run studios, that when the pandemic hit, there's this massive sense of relief because we're all doing these movies with tight deadlines, and we're all like, oh God, we're on set next week and we haven't done this and we haven't done that. Suddenly the pandemic hits and everybody, all of us said, wow, oh my God, we could just sit back and go to the workshop because we're isolated for everybody. We just carry on running stuff, and I'm sure it was a
silver lining.
Yeah, it was a silver lining. It's a horrible thing to be like that, but it was quite interesting. I mean, David from DTT said it, and Mike Marino said it, and you know, everybody. We're all like, oh, blimey, a bit of breathing space, because we don't have much breathing space in our working lives. Just wanted to jump in.
No, it's a good point. Yeah. So once we started shooting, it was obviously originally Mark and his team were going to stay with us for a good couple of weeks, so that the transition was a really nice, relaxed, fine-tune and syncing up with techniques and application and coloring techniques. That unfortunately didn't happen, and we were just dropped in the deep end when they came back and just went
with a lot of time to think about it beforehand.
A lot of time to think about it, and actually we did utilize that. We got a couple of doubles in, and we thought, we've got all these appliances. We've got a young guy looked like a little bit like Austin. We had a guy that looked a bit like Tom Hanks. So we do some makeup tests. So we got a chance to get our hands and color application just a little bit tweaked. Yeah, obviously it's got to be different when you get the real person in the chair, but that gave us a little bit of extra leeway and extra practice too with the appliances. And then it was into shooting and I guess the challenge there was, we talked about this the other day, was that get the actor as good as you could in the chair, and then we'd always get to set, and there would always be a block through a lighting check, and then we realized there was some color tweaks. Obviously, when the lighting hit the prosthetic, there was some tweaking to be done. So that's how we kind of approached each day.
Awesome. I just wanted to quickly ask, with the bodysuit stuff, does that always come from makeup, or does sometimes costume take care of that, or that build is always from the makeup side of things? Yeah,
if it's just a fat suit under clothing, then probably costume would handle it. But this is kind of makeup creature effects, so to speak, bodysuit stuff. So I think Mark would agree that you'd probably want to control that within the realms of makeup and prosthetics, and especially costuming, so you can get the two to match. But obviously I was doing them in Australia and Mark was doing the makeup. So it was a bit of you're using your best guess with past experience to get it as close as you can, and then there's obviously tweaks.
Yeah, that one is also down to you're directly there working with Catherine. She's got to make the costumes fit the fat suit. So in this instance, that was that was necessary that way. I find it varies from costume designer to costume designer. If it's like Jason said, if it's heavily involved with your prosthetic, i.e., Elvis had all these outfits that were open to the down to his waist almost, so all his chest is visible. So you've got to make the prosthetic chest, which Jason, we sculpted one version and Jason sculpted another over in Australia, and it was all hair punched and everything. So you've got to make that fit onto your padded suit and then the costume as well. So it's always a bit of a combo effort, but generally for movement and everything else, I like to be in control from our side of things when we're doing fat suits, to make sure it fits with the prosthetic. Sometimes if it's just a heavier belly and costume want to do it, then they do it. Yeah.
And I mean, every year I look at the nominated teams and I'm just like, I don't understand how anybody even votes, because they're all so incredible, but they're also vastly different as well. Like the variety of work is quite amazing. So I just would love to kind of hear from you guys is how you feel your work is different from your fellow nominees.
Yeah, I think ours is the only one that takes the two character makeups, basically. Elvis and Colonel Tom Parker takes them on a journey over a period of time. So we're going through several periods, and also, the transformation of Elvis from, like I said before, the fresh-faced Elvis of the 50s right through to just before his death, and Colonel Tom Parker's aging. So we'd sculpted stuff for Elvis, but Baz is the kind of director that even if you spend 6 months making stuff and designing stuff, when you actually get there and you stick it on your actors, things come up and it's like, oh, let's try this and let's try that. So when we first went over to Australia to hand over, all this stuff had been signed off. We didn't really have the time or the option to fly back to the UK and remake everything. It was sort of like get over there and do the changes over there. For instance, when we did the Colonel Tom Parker, the first stage of him, when you first see him in the movie, Baz wanted to fatten up the neck a little bit, and that's a complete, for a prosthetic makeup, that's a complete redo from the get-go. You can use the same core, but you've got to re-sculpt it all to get it fatter.
Yeah.
Or what we did was just Josh Weston sculpted a couple of plumpers that went underneath the makeup to fatten it up. So, Baz is like, and then he'd be like, oh, let's try a chin on Austin, and let's try this. And We had 5 different noses that we were trying out. We had a whole bunch of stuff, and it's a very sort of, that design part of the process is a very changeable thing. Yeah, sorry, did that answer the question, or did I wander off like aimlessly?
I think so. It answered it. You wandered off a little, but it was all very interesting. So I'll allow it, Mark. Did you have anything to add on that, Jason, or are you good?
Yeah, I would agree. The other films took place, I think, all in, unless I'm mistaken, all in a certain period, yeah, and ours spanned 30 odd years. And so, yeah, I'm just reiterating that Mark's 100% right. The nuances and as much as the nuances change with Tom Hanks getting slightly fatter, getting slightly grayer, a little bit less hair on the top, with crow's feet and age spots and liver spots and things like that helped age him down. The subtleties that the Elvis makeup went through were just, even though I was there doing it day to day with the guys, it was just amazing to watch that happen and to watch him go through that and to actually see the rushes and to, and see him in those different formats. Even when he was fattened up over that, we did 4 separate fat suits, starting from the first fat suit was just that kind of 2 inches of fat that a man can get as he starts to just slacken off. And that had the first prosthetic silicone piece on it. And the subtleties of that one to the next, to the big one in 77. And of course, all of his wigs that changed every single time too. There was, I think, 9 different looks almost with Austin.
I was just going to say, well, with that Elvis character, one thing that when you're watching the movie, we're, as makeup artists, we're always striving to have the makeup be as invisible as possible. And Elvis is a big, broad character. He's got a very strong look. He wore makeup himself. And it's quite nice to hear when you come out of there that people didn't realize Austin was wearing prosthetics. Didn't realize he has a chin on from the beginning. We pinned his ears back with prosthetics. Then a bit later on, he's in the '68 special, he's still looking super handsome, and he's got the cheeks and the jawline and all that stuff. And it's you've been successful when people go, oh, I didn't realize he was wearing prosthetics during that entire film.
Yeah, you've done your job.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So throughout this, what was one of your bigger challenges?
I think for me was, knowing that we were going to, my main guys were Josh Weston, who sculpted all the Colonel Tom Parker stuff, and Stephen Murphy, who sculpted Elvis stuff and some of the Colonel Tom Parker as well. And then myself, I was doing things like doing the prosthetics to pin the ears back, sculpting all the noses that we were going to test, and all that various stuff. But knowing that we're going to take all that stuff over to Australia, and then we've got to hand over to, we'd never met, had we, Jason, at the time. No. I knew Leslie from many years before from Babe, but I hadn't worked over in Australia since then. The biggest challenge was really, how are we going to do this, and I guess that we just built in these test periods. We were taken over to Australia initially to test Austin when he became free, and we did this 2 weeks. We just sort of landed, and we were in there, we were making pieces and doing all Baz's changes, and then working with Jason's team, and it was just, how do you guys do it, and how do you guys do it? And we sort of swapped around and did our painting techniques, and they did their painting techniques, and we slowly honed it. We didn't get Austin every day, but then when we didn't do it on Austin, we did it on someone else. And then with Colonel Tom Parker, we got a double in. And when we went back after Christmas, we tested Tom Parker. So there was it was 2 trips that we went out there, to 2 testing periods. And over that time, we just, the guys, Jason's guys are fantastic. Sean Genders, Emma George and Auntie McMullen, they were all starting to paint it all beautifully. By the time we left, like Jason said before, we were supposed to be having this 2 or 3 week handover period where myself and Josh Weston and Steve Murphy would stay with the guys and, just do this sort of get into filming, because things come up in filming. You can test and do stuff, and then it's like, okay, now we're filming, and the makeup's on for 12 hours while he's on stage performing, and that keeping that maintained is a different thing than sitting in a chair doing a test makeup, But the pandemic hit, and we had to leave, and then, but by the time we left, we were super confident that Jason's team, and they did an absolutely amazing job of it all. So it was great, but that was the biggest challenge out of the whole thing.
Oh yeah, look, I agree. That was challenging and nerve-wracking to be in that position, knowing who Mark and his team were, and stepping up. I've been around an awfully long time, but it's always you do something that scares you. So this was one of those things. So we stepped up, and the more we did it, the more things eased off, and we kind of we're off and running. But challenging, it was that initial prep was super challenging. Getting those suits ready in time. Obviously, it was completely alleviated when COVID hit because we could get them done. But once we were up and running, I think timing was a challenge at the start, and the pressure from the ADs to keep our times as compact as possible so they could get as much shooting done with the two leads as they could each day. So that was a pressure, but eventually we agreed on a time that seemed unreasonable at the time, but I knew we could hit it within that time frame. There was a bit of pushback, but we hit those times every day. We never held the filming up once, which was what you want. And both Tom Hanks and Austin were just consummate professionals, and they were great to have in the chair. You couldn't ask for two better actors, so that made our lives easy, and we tried to make their lives as easy as possible too by getting them in and out with as little drama. And colouring, I mentioned it before, but the colouring was a challenge. With the different lighting scenarios Baz had put in place, we were tweaking quite a bit. Also, when Austin sweat heavily, because Tom Hanks was mainly just standing around, walking around, and keeping calm and cool with all of his gear on. There were sometimes outdoors, he'd sweat profusely, and you'd get your little bead bubbles coming through in the corners, and so that was manageable. But Austin would really get really flushed when he's dancing, and so there was a little bit of color correcting to keep the tones of Austin's face and the prosthetics in sync.
And any lessons learned? I mean, we're always learning bits and pieces, but there's anything stand out? It sounds like Mark just enjoyed having some downtime.
I didn't have any downtime. I was in the workshop working most of the time, but we had a.
But was it a little calmer, Mark? Was it a little calmer?
A little calmer, yes. I did manage to do a bit of gardening.
There you go. Gardening, good for the soul.
Any lessons learned?
I was just going to it's a nice part of the process is how much you dilute the glue with the solvent for different parts of the face, where you need it to be stronger, where you need it to be softer, and mainly around the mouth area was obviously Tom Hanks is obviously around the mouth on anyone. That's where it's going to release first, but changing the consistency of the deadener and the silicone to make it a little bit softer, so there's more stretch, and then stronger glue around the mouth. So that was a dance that we had at the start, but we found the perfect formula and we were off. So awesome. I'd say that.
Yeah.
And my lesson learned is, and I think I've known it anyway for like 25 years or 30 years, whatever. But when somebody says a sculpture is approved and a makeup is approved, until we all know this, until you actually stick it on the actor, it's not. But then there are some directors who just want to change everything every day, and you just got to be prepared for that in our business. You just got to be prepared for these guys like Matteo Garrone on Pinocchio, sculpting that thing 20 times, 15, 20 times, and this one again, Baz could suddenly just come out like with Tom Parker. Hey, can we try this? Can we try that? Let's do this. Let's do that. So you've got to be on your toes. So it was more like a lesson remembered rather than a lesson learned.
So a little reminder.
A little reminder, yeah.
And,
don't forget that.
Yeah, exactly. And be calm. Just be, yes, absolutely, we can accommodate that.
Yes, I mean, you have to say yes, don't you? Like, can we do that? I remember reading a Rick Baker article many years ago, and he said he'd just go to meetings and go, they'd say, oh, we want a flying dragon, does this, that, and the other, and can you do that? And he'd just say yes. And then he'd walk out of it and go, how the hell am I going to do that?
Exactly. That's awesome. Sal, I just wanted to know if you wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to those that helped you. I know that you've named a few people, but now's the time to give some love.
I'll jump in if you don't,
Go for it.
Jump in with the Aussie crew. So yeah, I'd really like to shout out to obviously the prosthetic team. Sean Genders, who applied Tom's makeup with me, and Brittany Jones, who assisted us. Emma George and Anthony McMullen, who did Elvis's makeup with Sophie Thorpe assisting them. Makeup and hair designer Shane Thomas, and the other hair people, which was Tess Natoli and Louise Colston. Tess handled Austin's wigs on a daily, and Louise handled Tom Hanks's wig on a daily. So, and Kerry Thompson, of course, who I mentioned. Yeah, and the entire team, and my entire lab team back at J&B too. So, which was Stan Pacabra and Zara Long for the most part. Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
You know, my main two guys, Josh Weston, who sculpted all the Colonel Tom Parker stuff and designed that with myself and Stephen Murphy. You know, they've been working with me for a long time, both super talented sculptors and makeup artists. And the three of us flew over to Australia and you know, established the makeups with Jason. And then in the team, you know, mold shop, we've got Adam Edwards, who's just all round mold making genius and everything else genius. Tom Packwood, Colin Mangan, Anna Kisa painting, and Kate Woodhead in the silicon room. And you know, a big shout out to Aldo Signoretti, who's not here with us in this podcast, but he's nominated with myself and Jason. He was over when we did the test mate, did all the Colonel Tom Parker wigs and the Elvis wigs, and established all those during the testing period with us. And the late great Maurizio Silvi, who sadly passed away last year, I think it was. You know, Maurizio was makeup designer when we were doing the tests, but you know, the pandemic hit and those guys didn't end up going back, and Shane Thomas took over with you know, the makeup and hair design after that. But you know, a big shout out to Maurizio. He was well loved and he'll be missed.
Well said, well said.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So a huge congratulations again. Being nominated for an Oscar is pretty amazing. So enjoy the ride, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For links to see more about our guests, go to our Instagram at The Last Looks Podcast or our website, thelastlookspodcast.com. If you want to keep up with new episodes being released, be sure to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, or any podcast streaming platform. And remember, if you're enjoying the show, share it. The Last Looks Podcast would like to thank Brett Stanley and Sabrina Castro. The song Fun Time by DJ Quads. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
That's a wrap, people.